Hello, welcome to another Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. This episode is episode 36. Our guest is Paige Goble. Our topic, teen mental health, challenges, resources, and advocacy. My name is Neil Parekh. My co-host is Dawn Helmrich Neuburg. We're so glad to be with you today. Paige is a senior at Lake Braddock Secondary School here in Burke, Virginia, where I live. And if you can see the shirt, that's the Lake Braddock Bruins that I'm representing. My daughter is a seventh grader there, and I met Paige during the orientation for new students. She was tabling with her classmates. I struck up a conversation because she had a mental health flyer next to her. So I'm so glad that she was able to join us for this show.
Yeah, she's fantastic. By the way, I'm teeing this up right now, just having the prep call with her, and she is one heck of a human being. So I'm really excited to have her on the show.
No, I'm excited as well. I think it's going to be a great conversation. We had a focus on teen mental health last year when Sarah Wilson joined us. Sarah Wilson was a former colleague of mine at United Way of Snohomish County, and a lot of her clients are teens, young teens and young adults. So we really were able to focus on some of the topics that folks hopefully are interested in. There's a lot to cover today, and we want to get right into it. There are a lot of different things that we want to share with folks. But the first thing is want to actually give a shout out to Dawn. Dawn, this is the anniversary. Yesterday was the anniversary of the day that you were brutally attacked. For folks who are familiar with the show, who've seen the show before, Dawn was brutally attacked and raped 31 years ago.
32 now.
Now 32. And she wrote a book about it, in fact, The Blue Flower Curtain, which was incredible. Dawn, just take a moment. What does this anniversary mean to you? 32 years now.
Yeah. I, yesterday was a really hard day for me, and I'll say, I have a lot going on in my life right now, and so it was kind of exacerbated by the anniversary. But I'm always amazed at how differently it hits depending upon where I'm at in my life. And yesterday was just it hit very, very differently for me. I'm incredibly grateful. 32 years more than I should have been on this planet is something to be incredibly grateful for. I almost lost my life that day, and so there are feelings of gratefulness, and I feel incredibly blessed by that. But I also oftentimes take that time to reflect on the curiosity of who I might be had that day never happened. And in a Facebook post that I made yesterday, I said I think that many, 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 many people can relate with that when they have something really big happen in their life, no matter what it is, a divorce, a parent dies, something happens in your childhood. There are times when you think, like, what kind of person would I have become? What would I have done differently? Who would I be now? And I think for me, I'm very fortunate that I have been able to do a lot of advocacy work in the area of sexual violence, and use my story and my platform that I have to be able to speak and advocate for things like not victim blaming. Victim blaming happens so incredibly often to people intentionally and unintentionally when they have experienced a sexual assault and rape of some sort. So for me, it's I really feel grateful that I've had the opportunity to do that. I feel like I haven't done that enough this past year. I feel like I haven't done enough. And so it's been a really rough week for me because those feelings of inadequacy have really played a huge part in just kind of where I'm sitting today and all of this week. So I'm really glad to be able to do this show today. I'm really glad to be able to have Paige on this show today. It's going to tremendously, I think, help for me to hear and talk about mental health because I've kind of isolated myself the last couple of days. So I'm really excited that everybody's tuning in and that we're going to have a really great show today. So thanks for asking.
Absolutely. And I think some of the other things that we wanted to make sure that we honor today, of course, today is also September 11th. And it's been 24 years now since that horrific event. That's certainly going to bring up a lot for people. And this week, there were two very significant shootings. Gun violence is an epidemic in the States. Many people may not have heard of the school shooting in Colorado. That certainly was, in many ways, overshadowed by the political violence, the killing of the conservative activist Charlie Kirk. But these, all of these things bring up so many emotions for people, so many challenges. I know that I think about my sister who was in Manhattan. She actually had a meeting scheduled at the World Trade Center on 9/11, and they had last minute, they moved the meeting to, I think, the Empire State Building. And she watched, could see what was happening. She was with colleagues who had offices in the World Trade Center. I had my wife's cousin, her husband, worked at Con Edison downtown, and he was caught up in the rubble, in the debris. He was helping get water and snacks from vending machines and trying to help first responders and walk from downtown all the way up, the length of the island, Manhattan Island, to get out. It was just, I have my own personal stories. I was in Seattle at the time, how I heard about it and what happened. But really, I think of those two stories in particular. My friend Stephen Kaplan was a photographer for the New York Times, and he was somehow able to get a boat across the river to get back into New York to do some photography. So it certainly brings up a lot of memories for folks. Let's go ahead and welcome some of the folks that are watching, Dawn, before we bring on Paige. We have the Beetle Farmer watching on YouTube saying, "I know that kid." I'm not sure if you're talking about Paige or if it's a friend of Dawn's. We'll
not a friend of mine.
Hear from you later. But thank you for watching. Paula is watching from Tallahassee, Florida. And she says she appreciates all of what we do. Thank you. Jim Neuburg is watching from Milwaukee. I love you, Dawn. Jim, if you don't know, if you're not a regular to the show, Jim is Dawn's husband. It's very appropriate. He's actually just that way on the other side of the wall. And my sister, who I mentioned earlier, is watching from Bellevue, Washington. Amy, thank you for joining. Our friend Apollo is watching from Philadelphia, sending healing and light. Thank you, Apollo. My sister clarified that the meeting was moved to the Con Ed building at 16th and 3rd. And she ended up walking from 16th to 116th Street. We have Kate Easton watching. So grateful you're here to share with us, Dawn. Kate is a very close friend of both of ours, but very close friend of Dawn's as well, also in Milwaukee. But we did solve the mystery of who the beetle farmer is. And Paige, so happy that your father is watching, Paige's proud father. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll make sure Paige gets a chance to give you a proper shout out later in the show when she comes on. What we wanted to do is as Dawn mentioned earlier, this episode is going to focus on teen mental health. We're going to be talking about some of the challenges. Paige is going to share her experience, her story, some of the resources that she has been able to find, and the advocacy work that she's done. And as I mentioned earlier, I am so thankful for the work that Paige is doing, not just as a proud member of the Bruin family. I lived in Springfield, Virginia, not far from Lake Braddock, where my daughter is a 7th grader, but I know that the work that Paige is doing is laying the groundwork for my daughter and others who will be coming later. And if you see that in my voice, Dawn, just thinking about that, I did not expect that to come up, but just thinking about that made me emotional, because I'm thinking about all the challenges that people have. When we were in high school, Dawn, we never talked about this. This never came up. We never had resources. We never had support like this.
And we still had those challenges.
And we still have those challenges. And even as we've gotten older, I hate to put the numbers on it, but we're both in our 50s, lower 50s. But even up till when we started this show, I'd never talked out loud about having struggled with anxiety and depression. I'd never told people I saw a therapist. So just to see where this conversation is going is very exciting for me, and I'm so thankful. Paige wrote a really great blog post. I want to bring that up before we bring her on. Getting mental health support was hard, and she'll talk about the challenges she had in accessing care, but choosing to help other students was easy. A demanding urge for perfection made it impossible for me to take a step back, to give myself a break. I would have periods of time where existing felt exhausting. I felt as though being alive was a tremendous struggle. That's from the blog post written by Paige Goble, who is a senior at Lake Braddock Secondary School. Paige is also our guest today, and so we welcome her to the stage.
Hello.
Paige, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We are so thankful, as I said in the intro, in the longish intro before we brought you on, how much it means to us that you're doing this work and that you're sharing your own story, and that you have this passion for helping others find the resources that you were able to access. Without any other intro from us, can you share a little bit about your story, about what were some of the challenges you were experiencing, I guess going back to at least freshman year, if not before that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was kind of entering my freshman year, I had known that I kind of struggled with some anxiety, but it wasn't super apparent, and it wasn't a big issue for me until I started to kind of increase my workload. And I am a busy student. I do a lot of things in and outside of school. And so when all of that started to build up, I developed this kind of fear of imperfection. And I always knew that I was a perfectionist and that I demanded a lot from myself. But when all of that expectation started to build along with that pressure internally, I kind of started to snap. And it became a problem when I was starting to have panic attacks. I would have days where I just couldn't stop crying, and that the thoughts in my head were just driving me crazy. I would have physical symptoms of sometimes feeling nauseous. I would tear up my fingers. my nails would be almost gone because I couldn't focus on anything except making sure that they were perfect, because that was something within my control. And I would almost seek out and redo anything I could to try to make it more perfect, because that's just what I felt like I needed to do. And that kind of evolved into, as the pressures continue to increase, because freshman year isn't really where that stops, it became worse. And eventually it came to the point where I realized that I couldn't handle it by myself anymore, that the thoughts in my head weren't normal, that it wasn't just common everyday teenager stress. It was something that I needed to address. And so I went to my parents, who are in here. Hi, Beagle Farmer. And they are probably some of the most supportive people I've ever met. And I wouldn't trade them for the world, because they were incredible in helping me get support. I remember when things first started getting bad, my dad went to the library and he got books on teen anxiety and teen mental health, because he wanted to help me in any way that he could. And his first step was doing research and understanding. And that made me feel like I wasn't as alone, because I knew there was someone that was at least trying to understand me. But when we started to look out for help, I went, of course, to my school first, because Lake Braddock is a great school and a great community, and they try to support students struggling with mental health. And I went to my counselor, and I wasn't able to get the help that I need, because, of course, Lake Braddock is a great community, but it's a huge community. And we have almost 4,500 kids in the school. And so when there's only so many counselors, there's only so much time in the day for them to help people. And I wasn't able to get on that list. Even when my mom, who's a teacher at the school, reached out, it still took a long time for me to get help. And we ended up going outside of the school and finding a therapist for me, who was very helpful. It took a couple trial and errors to find somebody that fit with me, but we were able to find someone, and that helped me for a little bit. And then when I hit junior year, things started to get even worse. And I ended up seeing somebody else to consider medication, because I had been told to kind of float the idea that instead of just normal anxiety, I was struggling with OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. And it can manifest in a lot of different ways. I feel like in the media, we often see it as everything has to be in a straight line, color-coded, everything is perfect, but that's most certainly not how it is. For me, it works as my obsession is perfection. My compulsion, which is the kind of things I must do to work with that obsession, is work. I redo things. I do homework, and I don't stop doing homework. I don't give myself breaks. And it's just a constant cycle of work and redo and work and redo. And that wears on you. It exhausts you, as I talked about in my article. And so when I was able to finally get some medicine, which was a heated debate in my family, because we knew that sophomore, junior year pressures isn't where it's going to end. Because once you get out into the real world, things get hard. And so eventually we decided that medicine was the right step for me in this phase. And I took medicine, and it has, I would say, changed my life. I've gotten so much better. Though I still go to therapy, and the coping skills that I've learned in therapy, coupled with the medicine, have made me feel like I haven't felt since I was in elementary school. I often kind of use that comparison of freshman, sophomore, early junior year Paige compared to elementary school Paige. Elementary school Paige was always positive and always happy. And then once I hit high school, existing felt hard. And I was constantly tired and constantly drained. And now I feel like I'm back to that positive person that I used to be, but also a little bit more controlled, not as crazy as I was. And I am able to use the skills that I've learned to shift my mindset. And then also another outcome of all of this is that I was able to start a mental health campaign at my school, which Neil talked about. That's how we met. I was trying to get people to join the mental health campaigns, to sign up for a newsletter that we're starting this year. So last year was the first year of the mental health campaign, which was incredibly exciting. We hosted 5 events, I believe, and our first one had a turnout of 40 people, which I was very impressed with, because it was our first event and it was nice to see. So this was one of our first initiatives that we did. It's something I saw online that I thought was cool. So essentially it's like a photo op, but it says "Be the eye in kind" behind where me and my friend are standing. And so you stand there, and it's kind of to exemplify that Lake Braddock community is kind and that we support each other. And so that was kind of our first push of think about the mental health campaign, that we're here. And And the mental health campaign really launched kind of how I got into my advocacy, because it was just an initial idea. And we ended up putting up flyers that were that had resources. So actually, we just put up our new round this year, just this week, which was really exciting. But we have flyers just like this one that have non-emergency and emergency mental health resources for students. And so these ones focus on teen and young adults, and also Virginia, because that's where we're located. And so it was really awesome to find these resources and make them available, because I would have loved to have stuff like this. And 988 can be an intimidating number to call because it is often branded as a suicide prevention hotline. Yeah. And if you don't feel suicidal, it almost can feel like you're taking up space. And that, of course, is not the case. And 988 is for non-emergency uses. But I wanted to advertise these as well so people know that there are tons of options for them. And this mental health campaign, like I said, really launched my kind of phase of advocacy this past year. And so one of the things that I got to do was speak at the Department of Education, which was really incredible. I got to talk at their impact event at the end of Secretary Cardona's, not reign, but position of power. Thank you.
Tenure, yeah.
And so that was really incredible. I got to speak with 2 other student advocates, and I focused on mental health in schools and communities. And so that's a picture of me speaking there. And that was a really great opportunity for me to kind of share how students are handling mental health pressures, and how teachers and politicians can help. And so that was incredible, and I was really grateful to do that and represent students. And then my next really big thing that I was really grateful to do was I got to speak at Capitol Hill. I got to advocate with actual representatives and say what was happening for students and what needed to happen. And that's me under Capitol Hill in those tunnels. And I was very excited to get to do that, because it felt like I was making real change, and that I was making change on a level that people could feel. And I know that with mental health, any level is a level people can feel, because you don't really know how what you're doing is impacting. Just sharing a story, just like on this show, what Neil and Dawn have done is incredible. And so I was very grateful to take it to another level and get to really show that students can have an impact, especially in the realm of mental health.
I think it's incredible just to go from having faced some mental health challenges and finding the help you needed, but then turn around and turning it into such incredible advocacy. It's just great. Dawn, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask a question, because you, in your blog, you talked about how some of these things like started to manifest themselves when you started high school. Mm-hmm. and I noticed that you're catching students in your school around the middle school age, which I think, is really brilliant, because I bet if you would have had those kind of resources, right, you wouldn't be questioning when you got to high school and you're like, what is going on with my brain, right? Because you would have had things that you could, turn to. So what is it that you would like to do for middle schoolers to kind of help them understand what mental health resources is out there?
Really, I just want to put them in front of them. I don't want to force anybody to use anything, because taking the first step and acknowledging that you have a struggle is step 1, and then getting help is step 2. And so I want to make sure that people know that there is help, and that even if they don't need it, I want them to know where it is. So that's why I was at, we call it Brew and Blast. It's kind of our orientation. And I was there, and every newsletter that I've sent has the flyer that Neil showed that has all those non-emergency resources. And so everyone has access to those. They're all over the school. They're on my Instagram. So yes, they look just like these. I have a couple different versions of them, and I try to put them everywhere so that students always have those. And I think middle school students especially, it's hard to see the pressures until they're in your face. And so the goal of the campaign really is to make sure that people have those resources before they need them.
And I think that, middle school students, high school students anywhere face pressure. From what I understand, Northern Virginia in particular is a pretty high pressure area in terms of a lot of overachievers and a lot of people are focused on success. I want to bring in several comments that have come in during the show, Paige. A lot of support, a lot of kudos. So let's start off with, as I'm scrolling down here, first, our friend Apollo from Philadelphia saying, so glad Paige started this conversation on mental health in high school. I wish there was a Paige when I left high school for college. So many things would have changed for me. And that's the importance of thinking of it as a continuum. As Dawn mentioned, starting it early, seeing what you're doing for high school students, and hopefully there's some connections being made to the middle school students. And just to clarify for folks who may not be familiar, at Lake Braddock, it does go from 7 through 12, which is a bit of an anomaly, at least here in Northern Virginia. But the 7th and 8th graders are kind of on one side of the building, somewhat separated from the older students. And they have a different set of clubs and activities and after school programs. But hopefully there's some overlap, there's some mentoring that can take place, some support that can be offered. My sister, Amy, says, thank you for sharing your experiences. And she's so appreciative. She's happy to hear how supportive your parents were and are in particular. And so I definitely want to echo that. She's impressed by how poised and articulate you are as well. So she's got a lot of praise. Our friend Stephen Kaplan, who's a former guest on the show, says, Paige, you're such an inspiring young lady, and thank you for sharing your insight and great work toward helping others. He's sharing it on all the platforms that he's on, and I encourage everyone who is watching, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure to press play on the video so you actually can comment on the show. But share it, tag a friend if you're watching on LinkedIn, if you're on Twitter, let folks know about this conversation that we're having. And hopefully they'll be able to join us. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Paige, is what is the response that you've seen from other students, other classmates? When you first, if you can think back to that first meeting, because this is out of the student government, right? Mm-hmm. It's a committee, it's a project. At some point you must have raised your hand, so to speak, and said, hey, I'd like to start a project around mental health. What was the response, both internally and then also to the rest of the student body?
I think initially I went to my sponsors first with the idea, and they were kind of like, you can, but because it's a new initiative, I didn't get a ton of extra resources. So it was pretty much just me planning that first year. And this year, I'm actually so excited because just this week, they had me pitch it to my student government class, which is about 50 kids in my period and 50 in another. And I had probably 6 or 7 people in my class period come up to me and say that they were interested in helping me this year. And then a couple that were interested in helping me carry it on next year, even when I'm gone. So I'm happy that I'll get to leave a legacy of mental health conversations and support.
That's really great. The fact that it's going to continue after you. That's tremendous. Dawn, did you have a question you wanted to jump in with?
I did, because I think, Paige, what you're doing is really phenomenal. And I like how we've kind of talked about how like that pressure in life doesn't stop. And when we were on our call before the show, we were kind of all talking about how we had a difficult week. So I guess I wanted to ask, like, how do you manage and cope on top of all of the academics and the perfectionism and everything else that you have? How do you manage and cope with that along with this advocacy work that you're doing? How do you handle the pressure?
It's definitely difficult. I think it took a lot of time for me to figure it out. Definitely the first year, there were some days that I had to put a pause on the advocacy because I knew that I needed a second to focus on myself, because I've kind of thought about it as you can't be an advocate if you can't function. And so the first step is supporting yourself and making sure that you have what you need and then helping others. It's just like in an airplane where you put the mask on your face first and then people around you. And so I definitely work on coping mechanisms. My favorite is box breathing. Whenever my parents can see my anxiety written on my face, they always just sit in front of me and we just take a deep breath together. And like last night, my dad did it with me. I don't think he counted right, but I counted to 4. And so we had fun doing that. It made us laugh and it helped me kind of snap out of my funk. But it definitely takes a lot of figuring out who you are and how you can manage what you have going on. But I do it a million times over because it's so worth it to know that you're at least trying to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think about that all the time, because I do a lot of advocacy work as well. And there are times when, as an advocate, you feel that like sense of burnout where, you're doing so much for so many other people that sometimes you forget about yourself. So what are some things that you do for self-care?
Oh, goodness. One of the things, I guess the probably biggest thing that I do is I have a bedtime, which is kind of embarrassing to say as a senior in high school. But I go to bed at a pretty strict time every night because I have become very aware, as have my parents, that when I don't go to sleep at a certain time, I become very unpleasant to myself and probably to others as well. And so it helps me kind of regulate my body and make sure that my brain is in the right mindset for the next day. And I really like coping mechanisms. I love breathing. I love doing breathing exercises. I actually sometimes have to make my own. Like my therapist helps work with me. And like if we identify something that is kind of strange in that moment, we kind of find a breathing to replicate it. Like one time when I was having a lot of panic attacks, we came up with a breathing that was specific to calming myself during a panic attack because it almost simulated what a panic attack felt like. I would like get really tight as I breathed in, and then I would release as I breathed out to kind of practice that calming yourself down and releasing that tension during a panic attack. And so it's a lot of kind of finding what works for me. Another thing that I do is probably planning. It sounds silly, but it's probably my biggest coping mechanism that I work very hard. I have a very ornate to-do list, and I make sure, like I even have a list right next to me right now of the things that I wanted to mention, the things that I want to do. And it's important to me to kind of see it physically in front of me so that I can keep it straight in my head and not have to worry about it.
Absolutely. You told us that you actually work with several organizations that you've found in your journey or that you've supported. You mentioned NAMI of Northern Virginia. That's the hotline that you have on your flyer. Just a few shows ago, we actually had the COO of NAMI, the national organization, Mike Wood, as a guest on our show. And we often share NAMI's resources. NAMI, of course, is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So it's great to see that you're sharing their hotline and resource. But another group that you talked about working with is called Morgan's Message.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Morgan's Message is a group that works with mostly student athletes. It was created in the memory of Morgan Rogers, who was a lacrosse player at Duke, who unfortunately passed away due to suicide. And so her family and friends started an organization to support student athletes around the country. And so they have a lot of programs that go directly into campuses and high schools, and I believe some middle schools. And they work really hard to support their ambassadors. So I'm one of the ambassadors for the national program, as well as for my school chapter. My school chapter has been around a long time before I joined it or even started my mental health campaign. And so it's been really awesome to see it grow and to kind of collaborate with them through the mental health campaign, especially this year now that I get to be a part of it. And so they work really hard and give a lot of educational resources, which is really awesome. And so and they do a lot of dedication games as well, which is nice because then it kind of reaches a new audience of people who may not be as familiar with mental health resources or kind of the conversation and stigma around mental health.
Are you an athlete yourself?
Yes, I play lacrosse and I swim.
Okay. And tell us a little bit more about some of the challenges that student athletes have. Is it a question of, how are they seeing their physical health and their mental health as part of a whole picture? Because that's something that a lot of people have trouble with. I mean, even people who are advocates, even ourselves. I mean, one of the things that Dawn and I were talking about at the beginning of the show, or before we went live, rather, that we both had hard weeks this week. We struggled with our own mental health, with our own, kind of focus and motivation, and I had to just shut down at times. It's easier to tell someone you have a migraine than to say, "Hey, I'm a little depressed today. I can't really function. I can't really get done what I'm supposed to get done." How does that play out exactly for athletes when they're looking at both physical and mental?
I think athletes definitely put a higher priority on their physical health because it's a lot easier to go to a coach and say, my ankle hurts. Like I need some help with this ankle, because that is a problem that can be fixed. You can put a wrap on it, give it a week, and it'll be okay. But with mental health, it's not that way, and it's a lot harder to see. And so especially with athletes who definitely strive for perfection on the field and a lot of times off, it can be a bonus pressure. Additionally, the time of practicing and meeting with coaches and being a team player, it's a lot of extra pressure that a lot of people don't have and they can't understand. Because when you're playing a sport at a high level that even I don't do and I can't understand, it is a lot. And it's a lot of time. It's a huge time commitment that can take away from the ability you have to do those self-care techniques. And so when we're talking about athletes, it's really important to make sure that we're having an even playing field between that physical and mental health. And so that's really what Morgan's message tries to do.
That's great. It's really great. And then you also have worked with, and we're running their website on the bottom of the screen, morgansmessage.com, if folks want to learn more. There's another group that you work with as well, Work to Be Well.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So Work to Be Well is one of my favorite organizations. It's student-found, student-led. And so it's really incredible because all of the resources that they create are, again, made by students and for students. And so they work to increase the access people have to mental health resources. And so they are an amazing organization that I have the honor of being on the National Student Advisory Council for this year. And they do so much. So like this is one of the things they have. They have an emotional first aid kit that I've actually used in some of my mental health campaign events.
Oh, really?
They create their own resources and they're entirely free for anyone. And you can donate and support, which I highly recommend because they're a really great organization to support. But they do a lot for students, and they reach out to all of their clubs all the time. So they are some of the most responsive organizations I've ever worked with, because they're constantly checking in to see what students need, how they can help your school, and they're also constantly posting new things. I feel like every time I go on the website, there's new resources and new education to give out to people.
And one of the interesting things that they put on their website, and I thought it would be important to highlight, not just the description of their work, that they're a teen-led mental health and wellness program focusing on providing free mental health resources, but they are aware that information on governmental websites related to youth mental health may have been removed or edited. And their mission is to be the trusted source for educational tools and resources. They strive to create a safe and inclusive place to access mental health and wellness resources. I think it's important that organizations that are in this space flag that for folks and make sure that people understand that you need to know where you can find information, because the previous sources may not be your go-tos anymore. So I'm really glad to see that on their page.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So Paige, how did you get to be on the Youth Advisory Council? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you?
So I actually heard about Work to Be Well through the National Student Council, which I got to be an officer on. And so I got to go to a conference and see their presentation about Work to Be Well, which was an incredible experience because they have such amazing student speakers. And so I got to learn about it firsthand. And it was something that really intrigued me. And someone I knew on the National Student Council was also part of it. And so when the applications came around, which was in the spring, I believe, I jumped right on it and made sure that I had my application in. And so now there's, I think, probably like 40 of us or so. I think maybe 38. And we meet twice a week, or twice a month, not twice a week. That would be a lot. Twice a month to plan and make sure that the website is functioning well, that the clubs, we're going to start reaching out to them soon and making sure that they are doing well in their spaces and running social media. And they also have a podcast called Talk to Be Well.
It's a really good thing you have a good sleeping schedule, because it sounds like you have a lot on your plate.
Yes, I do.
Sleep is really important. I mean, it's you kind of joked about it earlier that as a senior, that to have a bedtime is kind of a little bit of a joke. But I'll say that, and I can't say that I'm following it necessarily. I might try and take inspiration from you, Paige, but I know that last year when I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, one of the things that they said, that yes, therapy is important. I've been in therapy for a while, so I was getting support there. Coaching is important. Medication can play a role, and that's everyone has to kind of come to that decision on their own and whether they can access it and afford it. But just as important is sleep as a foundation for what you're doing, nutrition and exercise. And those are basic things, but they really do make a big difference. And I think that one of the challenges that, for people, the three of us who have this compulsion, whether it's more on the perfectionist side or the overachieving side. I think Paige and I lean more toward the perfectionist side. Sometimes Dawn is more of an overachiever. It's hard to shut down. It's hard to, at the end of the day, feel like, and for me at least, I don't always feel like I deserve to sleep, to kind of call it a day, because I didn't get done what I wanted to get done. I didn't feel like I hit all my marks. And that just makes things worse when you don't give yourself the rest and then you go into the next day at a deficit.
My husband says all the time, I'm a terrible sleeper. And Paige, I really need to take a lesson from you, because I'm not a good sleeper. I don't go to bed early enough, and I don't sleep I don't sleep more than like an hour at a time. I wake up like almost every single hour. And my husband always teases me and says that he wonders what I would be like if I actually got a solid 8 hours of sleep. Like I am such an overachiever and I do so much on such little sleep. He always says, like, I don't know what you would be doing if you actually got like a solid 8 hours of sleep. And I've struggled with that my entire life, from the time I was young all the way to now. So I'll have to work on that. I think I'll have to work on that. I think even adults.
But you've seen it make a big difference, Paige.
I have, yeah. And another thing you mentioned was exercise. And I've always found, so like I said, I'm a two-sport athlete, so I pretty much have practice almost daily, nearly all year round. And my low point is in the fall, when I kind of have a break from when my summer season ends and when my winter season begins. And I find that my mental health is generally worse in that period because I'm not working out. And so whenever I am at a low point, my mom was like, maybe we should find a practice for you to go to. We should squeeze something in, because whenever I come back from a practice, I always feel better, even if it's just from the distraction or if it's from the physical exercise. It makes me feel like a different person. And so I know that I would not be as happy as I am if I didn't do as much as I do physically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think routine too is something that I've been learning. Again, I'm not a super routine person, but my husband is he's very routine. He likes things to be done, at certain times. And I've noticed that when you get into like that habit of that routine, that really does make things like a little bit easier on your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to give a quick programming note. We still have about 15 minutes left of the show, so if people have comments or questions, please feel free to share them. I want to give a quick shout out to our friend Rose Horowitz, who's watching. Says it's good to see Paige here. Rose is watching from Connecticut, I assume. But Rose, thank you so much for being here. I want to let folks know about our next show, just because we're going to be juggling our schedule a little bit due to some travel, etc. Our next show is going to be October 2nd. And my very good friend from Seattle, where I used to live, my wife went to grad school there. Talal was in grad school with her. Talal Hatter will be joining us, and the topic will be pride and shame, coming out, being out, and mental health. October 11th is National Coming Out Day, so this is going to be in advance of that. So we're very much looking forward to that episode. Again, Talal Hatter will be our guest for episode 37, Pride and Shame, Coming Out, Being Out, and Mental Health. So hopefully you'll join us on October 2nd for that episode. As we continue the conversation, Apollo is sharing that he has found hot yoga, jogging, helps him with his mental space. And he's glad that you're modeling that kind of exercise and good habits, Paige. And it definitely does make a difference. So thank you for that. What do you see in terms of where do you see the conversation going around mental health, particularly at the high school level? You talked earlier about how you had a good response when you proposed the idea, and people wanted to support the work that you're doing. They're looking at continuing it after you go. Do you have a sense of what kinds of activities or what kind of outreach would come next? I mean, where would you be pushing the envelope? What are some of the activities you think that the group can do in the next year, 2 years that they haven't done yet?
I think one of my goals would be to use the campaign to help kind of support a local organization. Like we talked about, is it NAMI or NAMI? I've always called it NAMI.
NAMI?
NAMI? Okay.
NAMI? I think it's NAMI, but I could be wrong.
I'm sure it is. I just like to call it NAMI, I guess. But my plan last year was to use NAMI's platform because they do with their like mental health walks. My plan was to use that to help raise money within the school, but my school has some trouble with fundraising because dealing with money in a school can be difficult. And so I ended up just doing that outside of school. And so doing that just as me, not the mental health campaign, me and my friends raised over $1,000 from that organization, which was really amazing. We were the biggest student fundraiser they've ever had. And so what I'd love to see the mental health campaign at school do is kind of break into that barrier and see how we can kind of get around the logistics of doing a fundraiser at school for another organization. We did kind of a baby one last year. We did a fun run that was to talk about the relationship between physical and mental health, which is what we just talked about, which is fun. And we invited the whole community. So it wasn't just students. It was the whole Lake Braddock community to it. We even had some kids from elementary schools come up, which was really amazing. And so it was definitely cool to see the whole community come together for that. And we had 3 organizations you could donate to: Morgan's Message, Work to Be Well, and NAMI, which was really awesome because we've mentioned all of those. And so it was cool to see people come together and really support those organizations, as well as learn about the connection between physical and mental health.
Great. I want to let people know that if they want to be added to our mailing list for upcoming announcements, send me an email. You see my email coming across the bottom of your screen, neil@digimentors.group, neil@digimentors.group. And now is also a good time to mention that this show is, we get pro bono support to produce the show from the consulting firm I work with, Digimentors. Digimentors does digital marketing, events and digital programs, strategic communications, trainings and workshops, and also helps with event amplification, staffing, recruiting, and more. Several of the folks that we're watching today are colleagues of mine through Digimentors, people like Paula Kiger, who said hello from Tallahassee at the top of the show. My friend Stephen Kaplan, who was a former guest, is also a colleague of mine there. And let's see if I can find his comment, because he had a great comment about, there we go, great comment about Paige earlier, how inspiring she was. And then Rose Horowitz, who is watching as well. So I'm always appreciative of the support that not only I get from the company, but also from my colleagues who share the show, comment, watch, and spread the word. So thank you to all of you for that. It definitely is, it means a lot. And it's something that, again, I never talked about mental health before doing the show. So to know I have that kind of support really means a lot. We do have a question from a viewer on YouTube whose moniker is the Beagle Farmer. For folks who may have joined us later, Beagle Farmer is Paige's proud father. So we want to bring in this question. Could Paige expand on what administrators at her school could do more of to improve students' mental health? Paige?
Absolutely.
Take it away.
Absolutely. I think administrators definitely play a really big role in the school community, especially in a school as big as Lake Braddock. We see their faces all the time, but oftentimes we actually don't know their names. And so it is really important to kind of have, I think, personal relationships if you can. Like, there are a couple admin that just because I do so much of the mental health campaign and I speak at stuff like this, that they know my name because I've presented at events for them before. And so, and I've said stuff like that where it's nice when an admin knows your name and has a personal connection with you, because it makes it feel like at school there's people that care about you. And like now admin do say my name when they see me in the hallway. They say, "Hi Paige, how are you?" And we have an actual conversation because they're making an effort to try to form those connections with students, and I see and appreciate that. And I think that is one of the really big things they can do. Additionally, really making sure that those resources are everywhere. I think that they have done a good job. There's been a lot of 988 posters all around the school that I've seen, and that are a really great first step. And I think because, again, like I said earlier, 988 is typically seen as a crisis line mostly. And that, sorry, I just saw my dad's comment again, that having more resources like those ones that are specifically labeled non-emergency is really important for students. And the admin have a really big role in presenting and reproducing those everywhere for students to have and see.
And I just want to remind folks who may have joined us late, Paige is a senior at Lake Braddock Secondary School, which is here in Burke, Virginia, about 10 minutes from where I live. You might notice my Lake Braddock Bruins shirt I'm representing. My daughter is just started in 7th grade at Lake Braddock. And I still am just so glad that I was able to meet Paige when I was on campus for what they call Bruin Blast, kind of an orientation for incoming 7th and 8th graders. And I saw Paige set up at a table with the sign about mental health, about supporting NAMI with the hotline, et cetera. so we started chatting, and just a few weeks later, she's here on our show. So really want to thank you for that. The comment that got her attention while she was talking earlier, and I want to take a moment before putting it up because it really is touching. Please let Paige know that her parents are constantly impressed by her and are always learning from her. We had to eat dessert without her. You couldn't wait for dessert. Oh no.
I want your dad.
Hopefully there's some. Oh, okay, I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to wait for the answer. Did you leave some dessert for Paige, or did you eat all of it? We need to know.
And what is the dessert?
And what is the dessert? If need be, Paige, I will be more than happy to go pick up dessert and leave it by your door if your parents actually eat all of it.
I appreciate it.
I don't know where you live. I'm hoping you'll tell me, so I'm not just driving around. But it does mean a lot. As I said earlier, that you're doing the work that you're doing, that you're laying the groundwork for incoming classes, because these are not the resources that Dawn and I had when we were growing up, and I know things would have been very different for us and countless others if we did have this kind of support.
Yeah.
Rose says good work. She's very, very proud of you as well. Your dad had put in a Go Bruins seniors rule. They do. And then we have the answer on dessert. There's maybe one scoop of cookies and ice cream, cookies and cream ice cream left. Hopefully that will be enough, Paige. You don't have too much dessert, right?
No, that sounds perfect.
You want to have just the right amount. And then we have, but you have earned it. We have some clapping coming in from someone with the moniker Feed on YouTube.
I feel like that might be the Ed, which would be
Ed?
My boyfriend Edwin.
Your boyfriend Edwin. Edwin, thank you so much for joining us and watching. I appreciate that. That's support. That's support right there. As we're nearing the end of the show, Dawn, is there something you want to ask Paige about?
I just wanted to highlight the last thing that you said about administrators. My daughter, when she was a senior in high school, she did a campaign around sexual assault advocacy, and she struggled with getting administrators at her school to listen, to understand, and she eventually got a teacher who she convinced to help her, and once she got that teacher helped get administrators on board. But I think that it's so important for students to feel like they can have that ultimate connection with administrators, where there doesn't have to be that go-between, especially when you're talking about things like mental health, which is so critical. And that's a really huge school. My daughter, I think, had 2,500 students in her school, which is still large. But I do think that that's really important. So I wanted to put an exclamation point on that last thing.
No, that's very important, particularly in a school like Lake Braddock, as Paige mentioned, 4,500 kids. It's not just students. It's not just for students to be able to establish those relationships. It's also, parents have to navigate this and negotiate it as well. For perspective, pretty sure Pam and I both went to the same college. We went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut. This is larger than our college was. We had like 2,600 students in college. 4,500 is more than half the size of my hometown, 40 minutes outside New York City in Hastings on Hudson, New York. So it's easy to get lost. It's easy to not know who to reach out to. But with the work that you're doing, Paige, and the relationships you're building, it's not only going to be great for you personally and for your classmates, but like I've said more than once, for students that are still going through starting secondary school this year and beyond. You're really laying the groundwork for a bright future. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. This was episode 36 of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. We focused on teen mental health, challenges, resources, and advocacy. And what an incredible conversation, Paige. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paige. What a great show. We really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate the opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
As we're saying goodbye, our friend Rose had a last question in, so I want to at least throw the question out, and maybe if you could give a quick answer, Paige, and then you can also go offline and comment on Facebook. Do students or your friends have added stress with the college application process?
I think
that's
the short answer would be yes.
Yeah.
It's just a lot, especially because a lot of people that I know are applying to at least 5 or 6 schools, which can be a ton of essays. And so it's just a lot of work and a lot of extra time on top of school and sports and everything that we're already doing.
Sure. Apollo, so with that, we'll wrap it up. Apollo says, thank you for the inspiration. Rose says, thank you. And we'll leave the last comment to the Beagle Farmer. If folks have not been paying attention, that's Paige's father. Thanks to Neil and Dawn for hosting. This is a great forum. Thank you very much. And you should rightfully be proud of the work that your daughter is doing. It really is great. So thank you again, and hopefully you'll join us for our next show, October 2nd, with Talal Hattar. Episode 37 will be Pride and Shame, Coming Out, Being Out, and Mental Health. With that, have a great evening, and we hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.